webinar is really just to show you the main fertility reports. I'm not going to go through everything, so it's going to be fairly short and brief, but I just want to show you which reports you should be looking at and kind of why you should be looking at it. So the first thing, I think it's really important on the dashboard that we have things like the insemination rate, the conception rate, but importantly, the preg rate. So if you haven't got that on your dashboard, if you just go to the little setting here, take one of the buttons off. So we'll take off expected calving interval because I can see we've already got that on there as a graph. So we'll remove that button there. Super, that's gone. And then if you scroll down, you can select your options. So I think we definitely want the preg rate sitting there. Okay, so everything is green on that, which is good. So we're happy with that. If we now go to the cow's head and we go to the fertility menu. Okay, all I'm going to do is just show you 3 reports here. So the first one, this is where we kind of always start. This is the fertility overview. So if we go in here, and what we're looking at here is it's a good report because it breaks down the cow numbers, 305 production, the young stock, but then also the cows. But what we're looking at is we're looking at the herd in its entirety. So it doesn't matter if that cow calved, the year or she's gone around the clock or anything, she's actually going to be included in this calculation. And if you want to change it, if you go to properties, I've set this up to look at it quarterly, but you can look at it monthly, you can look at it yearly. And remember, if you hit save settings at the bottom, that will then save that default setting the next time you go in. So if we say okay to that, so what we're looking at here is just quarterly, the number of cows in milk. We've got the 305 production, and we can see the total number of cows that were sold or that were died. If we then minimize the milking herd, it then takes us to the young stock. And here we can look at things like the average age at first calving, average age at insemination. And remember, if you see a figure and you want to look behind it, if you click on the blue eye, that will then give you the animals that are in the calculation and then their age, in this case, at first insemination. So again, we're now going to minimize the young stock, and that will then take us through to the cows within the herd. And here we can see the total number of cows that were born in the 4th quarter of 2000, the total number of heifers, and then we just go through all these sort of performance indicators sitting here. So average number of inseminations per pregnancy, so I can see that's actually looking a lot better. Our conception rate, our days to pregnancy, right down to our predicted calving interval. And the suspicious data, if you click on that, it will give you the reason, and it's basically anything that the program looks at that is not quite sure about. So the data here for a herd this size is really good, actually. There's only 3 bits of information in the 1st quarter. And you may be wondering what the grey is. The grey is there just to tell us that we're still waiting for a result. So there could be a PD, a cow's been served, but we haven't PD'd. So the data is not fully finished. And if we click on it, and then we search on it, you'll be able to see then where, and we search again, then we see for this one, there's just 1 cow where we're still awaiting the outcome of an insemination. And you can see that with the little, the box, and it's in black. So that's where we're still waiting for a result. So it great doesn't mean it's bad, it means that we're still waiting for information. Okay, so if we close that, so the first one that we looked at, that's the overview. That looks over a period of time. If I then take you to insemination analysis. Now this report, it's got some super graphs in it, but the one I want you to look at really is on the summary, because there's a lot of information that we can look at there. So first of all, we're looking at the voluntary waiting period, and then we can see that we're completely sticking to it on this herd. The red box, that shows us the cow number and the outcome of that first insemination and when she was actually served. So we're completely following the protocols here. But if you go to summary, and I've seen this actually when I've done trainings, people look at this and they look at the graph and they kind of, yeah, okay, that's good. And then they close it. But this is a complete pack of reports. So if we go to the top left, this is just page 1 of 8 different pages. And if we just scroll through it, it then takes us to the individual bulls, and we can then have a breakdown of that bull and the performance. But the bit I want to draw your attention to is if we go right through to the page 7, okay, here we have a breakdown of the difference between sex semen and non-sex semen. And if we scroll a little bit further down, we also then break down the type of managed heat, so we can see how effective that's been. And if we go to the final page, we then have a summary and a breakdown of the difference between the natural heats and the managed heats. So insemination analysis, if you go into the summary, that's a complete sort of pack of reports for your vet or your consultant, and that's the place where you'll find a breakdown of your sex semen. Okay, let's close that. Let's close it and go back to the main menu. Right, so we've looked at the overview, we've looked at insemination analysis, and then if I just go through to this one, the analysis per calving group. Now this report looks very, very similar to 3.1, but it's very different in the way that it's actually analysing the animals. So we're looking at this one and it's set per month, per calving month, because we calve all year round. So in September 21, we had 49 cows that calved in that month. So what we're doing is we're looking at the animals that calved in a specific period. And again, if we go across to properties, you can change that and you could say, okay, I want animals that calved quarterly, or maybe animals that calved yearly. But in this one, I'm happy looking at it at 12 months of data. So as I said, it's different to 3.1, the overview, because we're actually looking at a group of animals and how they've performed. And if we scroll down, you'll see all the sort of standard performance indicators here. But we also have at the bottom, we can see the submission rates. So that's the overall submission rate. So all the cows that we planned to actually inseminate, we finally did. But in the voluntary waiting period, plus 21 days, we inseminated 96%, which was really good. If I look at the March calvers, we didn't do quite so well. We were down at 84%. And then the submission rate, voluntary waiting period plus 42, that's where we're looking at with 2 heats, and we can see we're pretty good there. And you'll also have the 100 days in milk and the 200 days not in milk. So just remember, scroll down on this report and then you'll have access to all this information here. Okay, let's close that. So finally, we're going to go to the USKPIs. This is a really important report. So the way that most people will look at it, it will default if we just go to the bottom left, and if we select days in milk, maybe the first time you go into it, it will be set like that. But personally, I prefer to look at it by calendar days. So what we have here is we have 3-week periods. And if you're not sure what they are, just put the cursor over the top of them. And if I pick this period here, so that's week 19 to 21, 102 cows, so that's early May, were eligible to be inseminated, and we inseminated 85. So the insemination rate was 83%. So that was really, really good. Then if we look and we see out of those cows, how many we actually got in calf, we got 64 in calf. So we had a fantastic preg rate in that 3-week period of 64%. If you are, let's say, block calving, and you want to condense this report down because there's some periods where nothing's happening, if you go to properties and you go across to here, insemination rate, here you can put your start date in and you can put your end date. And if you want to extend this report and perhaps go back in time, then again, you can do it. So let's say okay to that. Right. I think what a lot of people do is they look at this report, and it's great to say the overall insemination rate is 61%. The overall preg rate is 29%, and then we can see how it fluctuates. But I think some people now just close it at this point, but there's a lot more information we can unlock. So if you go to close, no, sorry, don't close it. If you go to conception, that's better. And then you click on inseminated again. Here, you'll see group by. These are the different ways we can look at the data. So these are the actual bulls that we use within that period, and then the conception rate. But what you can also do is you can split it into periods. And if you do that, it then shows you the bulls that you use per month and what the outcome was. So that's what split into periods means. So we'll just take that out. We'll go back to group by. And then you can see here, we can look at it by the individual inseminator. We could look at it by the day of the week. We can look at it by calendar date. That just gives us a monthly breakdown of the conception rates. We can look at it by estrus signs, so that's the type of heat, whether it was a natural heat, whether it was a managed heat, and right down to the bottom, then we can look at intervals as well. So If you can remember that, go to the conception rate, go down to the group by, because there's so much information here that you can access. And for those of you who are wondering that, can I do it for the young stock as well? If we go down to here, you'll see you have the option to just look at young stock or include both. Okay, so let's go back to the dashboard. That's a quick overview of 3 of the most, I think, important reports within fertility. Hopefully that gives you an idea which reports you should be looking at for a particular reason. And I think the most important thing, if you have any questions, please call us. We can log in.